Hey, this is Chelsea Dupre, host of CJ and Cell. Thanks for listening to the following podcast on Public House Media.
This is Bryce Burge, host of Your Soccer Passport here on Public House Media. After this episode, come join us on a trip around the soccer world as we discuss club and country every Tuesday. Stamp your soccer passport by subscribing on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you get your Public House Media podcasts. And thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
So my favorite part about all of it is I was 24 when I was raped by Todd, and I didn't understand alcohol and consent. I didn't understand that if you were too drunk, you couldn't consent, and that if you were passed out, you couldn't consent. So in my brain, it didn't quite register the way that it was supposed to be. And one of the things that all of the trolls have been saying is that, you know, at 24, you can't be too naive to understand consent. However, Vic, who is almost in his 60s, is allowed to be too naive to understand touching inappropriately.
What an interesting double standard.
Right?
How strange. But you know what, though? I do think that kind of goes back to not having the conversations that we need to be having with your offspring or with whoever, like just being able to openly talk about what is and is not and the effects of it and the implications of it. Like the judicial system and law enforcement by and large doesn't believe that like rape physically hurts anybody. Oh, it was just bad sex. That's
I had a relative specifically say to me that it's not rape unless it's violent.
This is not a Tenacious D album. Like,
well, here in California, required. In the last 2 years, California has passed very strict consent laws. Here, if it's not an enthusiastic yes, it's a no. And if there is no presence of anything, it's a no.
It's a no. Because it's the inability to give consent.
Right. And this is while other states are passing laws saying that women can't rescind consent once the sex act has already started.
And that lends itself into stealthing laws when guys try to ditch the condoms like halfway through.
Yeah, whatever. Most states currently stealthing is considered rape, but yeah. So, we also passed legislation here for very strict consent education in schools. So now it is mandatory in every school in California to teach consent.
And it shouldn't be that, then the thing is like, it shouldn't be that difficult. There was a girl on Twitter that was like, if you see $5 in my wallet and I tell you that you can't have it, you can't have it.
Yeah.
If you see $5 in my wallet and I'm over here or I'm passed out and I didn't tell you that you could have it, you can't have it. Like,
right.
It was a very, very easy concept once you pare it down to something else, I guess. I thought it was easy. Karen Becker. Oh, I'm drunk and being inappropriate.
Oh, I fell over.
Oh, Texas passed a consent law. It's really,
Good.
Really important. When I was in Germany covering the sex attacks in Cologne on New Year's Eve.
Oh, yeah.
They had 600, like, coordinated sexual assaults, basically, within one little piece of ground in the front of the cathedral in Cologne during the New Year's Eve, blah, blah, blah. And everybody was like, oh, like they're, you know, this is illegal. You know, these people are going to get caught up, blah, 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 blah. Apparently at the time, Germany did not have the language or the capacity in their laws to make sexual assault a crime. So technically, legally speaking, these people that were assaulted, it wasn't necessarily illegal because in Germany at the time, they've since changed it, unless it was forced penis into vagina, it wasn't rape. Anything outside of that very narrow definition, and they didn't have a definition for sexual assault at all, period. That was just completely off the table. And then the only place where it picked back up was like molesting children.
That's crazy.
And even still, the definition for that was really narrow. And in Germany, if you do even get charged for being a pedophile, it's like 4 years in prison and then they let you loose.
It's less than that here.
Well, that's if you get convicted. Getting convicted of a sex crime is very, 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 very tough.
I know. It's so rare.
Which is another thing too, like we can pass all these laws and like rah, rah, rah all we want, but unless law enforcement, unless police and other first responders or people that have duty to report, like teachers or medical personnel, unless they do their job and then kick that up to the judicial system that then cares and does something and does their job because it's...
Oh yeah, and I mean there's hundreds of thousands of untested rape kits in this country. It's and
that's if you get one at all. Most
and
people...
It's just not... And just because it comes back negative doesn't mean you weren't raped. It just meant that there was no tearing or, so if you were either passed out or, which, I mean, if you were passed out, there's probably going to be, or, most of the time it's somebody you know, so you just let it happen and let it get over with. You might not get a positive rape
well, even
test.
still, because it's like in the rape case, it's like the clock.
And it's 2 hours. 2 hours.
Is it 2 hours?
Naked on a table being examined by a doctor.
That's how long it takes for a freaking clock test?
That is how long a rape test takes.
And a swab? Oh my lord.
Because it's more than that. They examine your entire body. They document any mark that you have on you. And then when they examine the insides of you, they go in and they do a very thorough examination to see if there's any tears or abrasions. They take swabs of
leftover fluids.
Anything.
That's a long time.
Garrick, what are you apologizing for? Good ball.
Okay, Kelly, my mother works for the NCMEC. I remember having to teach her about practices and procedure for rape cases and whatnot. It's really not common knowledge, and it's probably something, and that's another thing that I want to do, like, closer to the 100th episode of the show, is, like, I want, when we're, by the time we wrap up this Me Too situation, I want people to know how to use their voice and hopefully get themselves out of a bad situation, but if they do end up in the aftermath of a bad situation, of how to deal with it, because most people don't know how to report anything and how to get
and sometimes, I mean, I have several friends that went to the cops, and the cops just didn't take them seriously.
No. They're like,
They'll ask, what were you wearing? Were you drinking? Is this somebody that you've had previous sexual experiences with?
Are you sexually active?
And in this country, until recently, you could legally rape your wife. Your wife could not turn down
withhold consent. Yeah.
Right. And I mean, all of this is just super awkward and just archaic views on what sex is to begin with. Because in my foster home, I was raped by a sister. So, like, the whole view of, like, women not raping or
that's another big one. Girls get away with all kinds of stuff.
That's a huge one. And, and as somebody who's bisexual, like, sex is not just penis into a hole.
Yeah.
Like, sex is more than that. So
it's like, that's like one little tiny narrow piece in a gigantic web of things you might never even heard of. Like,
oral sex is sex. Any type of penetration is sex,
There's a woman that I interviewed when I was in Orlando talking to the people that survived the Pulse nightclub attack. She told a story about how she basically got drugged and raped by a woman. And that's when I was sending it sending it out for notes. That's what people came back to me with, like, I didn't know that a woman could rape another woman. Like, that was out of all the gnarly stuff that I had covered in 90 minutes, people that had been shot or whatever, like, literally name a thing. And I had something on it or somebody talking about it. And that was one of the things, there was like two things that people were really mind blown about. And one of the 50% of the time, it was that a woman had the ability to rape another woman, which, when you think about it as a physics equation, okay, maybe, but the fact, like, taking advantage of somebody is taking advantage of somebody.
Right.
Like, it doesn't, anatomy kind of,
that's why I've tried to, in my personal space, I've tried to move away from the word rape and replace it with sexual assault, because sexual assault covers
a lot more.
And sexual assault also covers any type of unwanted touch that is sexual in nature. So with like the way that with Vic's MO, he would get really close to a woman, grab them by the back of their skull and pull their hair down. And that's what he did to me. So with that, that's sexual assault. It was sexual in nature.
That was his motive.
Yeah.
Like
that was his MO. That is literally what he did. And I thought I was the only person for the longest time until I was the first person with a name and a face to come forward. And after I came forward, several other people,
when the door
including
opens.
voice actresses, came forward and be like, he did the exact same thing to me. And then you know, and it's a hard thing. You know, I was an ugly, nerdy kid, and I still struggle a lot with confidence and the way that I look. And so especially in that time period, I was going through a divorce, and with me, I never really thought that people were truly interested in me. So when somebody was like that with me, my brain kind of malfunctions, and I'm just like,
what?
Maybe they were just being playful because we're friends. Like, you don't really understand why somebody might do that to you. And I mean, it was definitely at that moment I was like, I'm never going to be alone with this person ever again. I'm never going to be around this person ever again. And I stopped working for anime companies shortly after because I didn't want to risk working an event that he was a part of.
No, it's not worth it. And that's how you end up ejecting yourself from a business or an industry or whatever.
All of my hair off so that I couldn't be grabbed like that again.
Really typical response. I think they did a commercial about it.
Did they?
Yeah, but it was like a domestic violence one. But it may have been in India. It might not have been here. I might have seen this on my Indian newsletter that I subscribe to. But yeah, it's like a lady. She sits in a chair because like beauty parlors in India are like, they're lit. They're really fun. She sits in the chair. She's like, cut my hair. And, you know, got super long hair. And the lady cuts it like up to, like from here up to here. And then she's like, no, cut it more. And then she's like, okay, snip. And then she gives her this like lob. And then from the lob, it goes to like a bob. And she's like, no. It's still too long. And she's like, the lady's like, I'm cutting all of your hair off. Like, what do you want? She's like, I need you to make this so he can never grab me by the hair again. And that was like their whole like, domestic violence campaign.
And I mean, especially in India, that's huge. Like their hair is sacred.
Yeah.
So, you know, that cutting off hair like that in India is
a very, very big deal.
Yeah.
And to like just throw it on the floor and not like give it to a temple, like that has its own like situation.
I donated mine.
Yeah. That's like its own situation in itself. But yeah, they've actually in India anyway, I don't know if it's gone anywhere else, but they've actually made like full like campaigns about that. But it's not an uncommon response though. A lot of people do that. Or they end up with this whole other situation. I think Steven told me that he had an ex-girlfriend that was raped by, I want to say he was a dentist. Don't quote me on that. But he did go to prison for a long time. But she became like this, she like, whatever her style was, like she basically like 180'd it. It was like, if I don't look like I did then this won't happen again. Or like, it's a whole, like there's a whole process of like trying to get away from that. And it's different for everybody, but.
When I was younger, I just got pushed into, tomboy. And
a lot of people do. They go with like the baggier shirts or like.
And I'm still quite a bit of tomboy. I mean, but for me, it also, you know, I struggled a lot with identity because of it. And, you know, I've been told because of that, you know, I've been very masculine my whole life. And so like now I identify as non-binary because to me, I don't feel male or female. And people just don't realize how much this type of stuff affects a person mentally. And like I said, I have an amazing psychiatrist. She's been working with me and helping me a lot with building up confidence in myself and feeling that I'm worth this life. And a lot of people don't have access to healthcare. I'm lucky I'm in California.
Or even going about finding a therapist who is qualified and helpful for that situation is it's hard enough in itself. It's like finding a lawyer. Like, it's hard.
Yeah.
There's speaking of which, there's a really good article that came out a couple years ago, and it's called I think it's called The Aftermath of Rape, but it's the actual math on how much it costs. This woman, right, she's a mom, she had a daughter that was raped in college. But she did the actual dollars and cents breakdown on what it cost them in therapy, what it cost her in lost tuition, she added it up, and I think it was several $100,000. It was a lot. I think it was $322.
There's also
like that.
having the wherewithal to know that you need to go.
Yeah.
I didn't know that I had all these control issues. I didn't know that a lot of my idiosyncrasies all stem from
those
being
events.
in foster care.
Yeah.
So when I started seeing my psychiatrist, we just celebrated our 1-year anniversary.
Did you guys have a dinner? What did you do?
I am supposed to make her a cupcake.
Okay.
But
that's fair.
For learning these weird things that I do and these weird things that I think, because the big one for me is if I can't do it 100%, I don't do it at all. And it's all these issues I have.
You can't do an 83. You can't rock with a B+.
No, can't do it. So all of these control issues that I have, I'm trying to get better at it, but yeah, that's been a huge thing is all these control issues and learning that all these control issues come from, it all stems from this one
the out
source
of control
that snowballed because I had no control over anything. And I mean, growing up in foster care is already hard enough, let alone you ending up in a home like that.
Yeah.
And I argue with a lot of pro-life people, and the one thing that I usually say to them is, you're not paying my therapy bills. You do not care about what happens to us once we're born. You don't care where we end up. You don't care. I mean,
well, then
a huge portion of them
takes you from
end up in prison. A huge, more than 20% of girls end up pregnant before they're 21. And it just perpetuates a cycle. My parents, their parents, all in foster care. So it just snowballed and trickled down.
Yeah. That many generations?
Yeah.
Yet they still
did it.
Still keep making this situation. Well, then foster care only takes you from whenever you get in to 18. Literally
in
the day.
California, it's 21.
It's 21?
If they're accepted into CASA. I do a lot of charity work with CASA, and we are trying to get it pushed to 25.
That's a long time.
Yeah. But you can't.
But what if you wanted to get out? What if
you can get out if you want to? Yeah. Basically, you don't stay in your foster home. They just support you until you're 25.
Oh, okay.
So
gotcha.
Once you turn 18,
so you're not beholden to that foster home.
Well, the family's not, and more often than not, the family's going to kick you out. So they help them find a place to live. They help them get a job. They help them go to college. Anything that they want.
Learn all these skills that they can get because they don't have their parents.
And so basically just setting them up to be more successful and not, I think people are children till they're 25. And so not being a child with a child and not ending up in prison, the percentage of people in prison who went through the system is alarmingly high, especially considering, it's a very small percentage of children who go through the system. 30.
Their general population to prison population ratio is
it's not good. And, the 10 times more likely to try to commit suicide. If you are disabled and in foster care,
God help you.
20%, 20 times more likely to be sexually abused. And the statistics of what happens to foster kids is not happy. And I tell people all the time, if I could go back in time and tell my biological mother to get an abortion, I would. And people are always like, oh, well, I'm glad.
Do you have siblings?
I have 4 siblings biologically. 2 of us were in the same home, and the other 3 were in separate homes.
So you didn't get placed together?
No.
You got placed separately?
When I was 11, I'm the middle. When I was 11 months old, myself, my older brother, my older sister went into foster care, and we all went to different homes. And then my younger sister was adopted by my foster mother. She was the only one of us that was adopted. And then my younger brother, he went into foster care for a little bit and then went to go live with our birth giver. And he stayed with her until he turned 18. And then when I was about 11, they abolished long-term foster care in Louisiana. So when I was almost 15, I went to go live with my birth giver and moved out the morning I turned 18.
So they abolished long-term? What is that? So there's like, you have to
age out.
Oh, you couldn't age out.
So you either had to be adopted or you had to go live with your biological parents.
Even if your biological parents landed you in foster care in the first place?
Yeah, there's a reason her children were taken away.
Yeah, well, it's pretty hard to get your parents, or get, like, your kids taken away from you. Like, it's not...
Yeah, and it's super
the threshold's
easy.
Pretty
It's
high.
actually pretty easy to get them back, too.
Really?
Yeah. And so you basically have to pass a course, prove you have income, and that's kind of it. That's kind of it.
They really set the bar low there.
Oh, yeah.
Good
Like,
job,
the
kids.
foster care system is a mess. And that's why
Was it state-specific, or were these, like, national...
No.
laws that you're
Foster care is specific to each state. But each state in the United States has CASA programs. It started in California by a judge who hated the system because when you're a foster kid, you gotta go to court twice a year if your parents don't get you back. So you have to go and they have to plead their case, and then the judge decides whether or not they stay in the system.
Does the judge take the kid's voice into account, or?
Not usually. Not usually. It's a pretty rare case that the kid's voice is taken into account, because if they're being abused in normal circumstances, this didn't work for me. I tried to do this and it didn't work. They're supposed to report it to their social worker. And I did twice, and it didn't go.
Clearly that didn't work out. So
I just stopped reporting it.
Make it to the judge. That happens.
Yeah.
People say something because you only have like so much like emotional dexterity to like get to say anything.
Louisiana is pretty backwards, yeah. That's the reason I don't live there now. And I miss it. Like, I just got back from there a couple months ago, but I would never live there again.
It's such a, like, the judicial system is so wild in trying to, like, navigate that. But that's kind of interesting because, like, when I left my parents, I went to court. I wasn't supposed to. They're like, what are you doing here? I'm like, I have things to say. They're like, you're not allowed in here. I'm like, well, I'm here, so what does it matter? And then they're like, okay, so, like, you're not going back? No. And they're like, okay. And that was, like, basically, but that was, like, the friend of the court system in downtown Detroit. And Lord knows those people are worn down. So they were like, cool, and just sent me on my merry way, basically.
Yeah, the only time I got to speak in court was when they were asking us, you know, who do you want to live with? Like the last court hearing we had, we were promised the moon and stars by our birth giver and her husband.
Of course.
And so,
because they'll say anything.
We chose them, and I will never forget my foster mom's face. And it was difficult because I still think that my foster mom loved me, but, you know, I just thought I was going towards something better, and it wasn't. So I left, and I have no safety net, and I have no plan B.
Never seen a safety net in my life. I've only heard about them. Yeah. Are we sure they're even real?
But, you know, and that's the thing is people sit here and argue about this stuff, and I'm like, you just don't care. Like, you don't care.
It's really interesting to me because, like, most people never have any, like, brushes with the judicial system and like where they have to, like, go argue with their life.
Never.
If it's Detroit worn down is the default mode nowadays. Yeah.
At least we're not Detroit.
It's been like that since I'm gonna say the 80s. That's where I'm gonna pinpoint that. I'm gonna say it's probably the 80s is where they hit their worn down launch pad, basically. But yeah, like, when I went, even though I was not welcome there, I was like, I'm here, deal with it. And they're like, okay, bye. Like, that wasn't, they didn't, I remember the lady was like, so you're not going to do this. And I'm like, no, I'm not. And she was like, okay. End of conversation. And she like ushered me out of her office and down the hall, and that was that.
Yeah, I could see that with you though.
Yeah. It's like, okay, no, okay. Clearly we're not going to be changing anything about that. So cool. Yeah.
Finger gun.
Yeah. She was like, just completely like flat faced. Like, her eyelids didn't move.
Maybe they were spirit gums.
They could have been, now that I think about it, because she was like a really, it's like, when you think about like in one ear and out the other, like she was like that as a person, if that makes any sense.
I mean, you guys know, you're my friends, that I work with CASA a lot with volunteering and helping spread awareness about the program, which is where they appoint an advocate to children who had rough goes in the system and with their birth parents, and basically just make sure that they're being taken care of. I did try to train to be an advocate, but found out really quickly why former foster youth do not
do those things.
Do it. And like, that's what pushed me into therapy was that.
Well,
because
I mean, I guess that's a happy accident.
I want to be able to do it one day.
At some point. Well, and that's true. Just because you can't do it now doesn't mean you can't do it forever. Like, that's not finite.
My experience sucked, and I wish I could go back and change it. However, yeah, I mean, I do spread a lot of awareness about the system. And
how did you find your therapist though? Like, that's what I'm.
I mean, I have state insurance, so I was just looking around, and there's in Hollywood, there's a place called like Hollywood Mental Health or something, and it's
something generic sounding.
It's something where they have a ton of different therapists and psychiatrists, and they all specialize in different things. So I was really attracted to that because I had like a few things that I needed to go in for. So I went in, they do intake. It's actually kind of a pain. It takes 2 days to do intake, and then they assign you someone. And I just lucked out. The first person they assigned me.
Really?
Yeah.
That was, they were just like, bam.
Yep. First person they assigned me, she's amazing. She used to treat Vietnam veterans, so she specializes.
Oh, she's gnarly.
She specializes in PTSD and trauma.
Yeah.
So she's been helping me get through mine. And, you know, the one thing that she says to me all the time is, she's like, Jessie, there's nothing about you that doesn't make me hopeful that you can't get better. So, I think she's amazing.
Well, I think just the act of like trying to get better is a long.
Yeah, and I mean,
I think that's like
normally people only see a psychiatrist for a couple of months. I've been seeing mine for over a year, because normally you see a psychiatrist and then they refer you to a psychologist. And I mean, I definitely go through times where I don't see her for like a month because I'm having issues, but usually it's because I took my meds wrong.
Usually there's a user error going on there.
Yeah, definitely user error. But I mean, I'm on.
But how cool is that you just landed on the right person, like, immediately? Because that doesn't happen.
I lucked out. I really lucked out.
Have to like call around and like scour Yelp and
that's the thing too. Like, if you get sent to someone or you find somebody that you don't like, you have to keep trying and find somebody that you do like. Because my entire life, I had bad therapists. I had bad psychologists, and it made me not want to see anyone. And when I was going through my case study for endometriosis, I got turned down from 3 different clinics because they were just like, we are not equipped to handle your case. And I was like, cool. That doesn't make me feel worse.
Cool story, bro.
So,
oh my God.
It's like all that karma kind of built up, and then I lucked out finding my.
But at least they were honest though, because they could have just kept.
That's true.
They could have kept writing the check and done nothing for you.
Yeah.
And.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredibly true. Yeah.
You would be. Yeah. At least I would say they're honest, because they could have really rode that out.
Yeah.
And you could have had an entire different outlook on.
You definitely want to
therapy.
find somebody who specializes in what it is that you want to get treated. And for me, I knew my PTSD and my trauma was a big problem. So that's what I specifically get treated for.
Well, I mean, that makes sense. That's fair. But like finding that person is hard. It's like trying to find like any sort of service provider that's like,
Oh yeah. I mean,
going to-
I'm still going through GPs trying to find a GP I like. So
I think a lot of people are. I see that a lot. People are like, do you have a so-and-so that you like? And everyone's like, no, they're all trash. Like, really?
And yeah,
All
I
of
mean,
them?
when you have endometriosis, finding a gynecologist you don't hate is really
Yeah,
difficult.
I see that all the time, like girls posting like, do you have somebody that like blah, blah, blah?
And the
blah,
only
blah?
specialist for endometriosis in Los Angeles is at UCLA, and she's the worst bedside manner ever.
I'm sure.
She's an amazing doctor, but her bedside manner is just
Is she a military
terrible. No.
doctor? No? That usually goes hand in hand. Like, chop it, flip it, sew it out. Like, that's
Yeah.
usually their thing. 2 days?
We were talking about intake was 2 days.
2 days, yeah.
Because you do all the paperwork stuff and all the insurance stuff, and then you have to come back and get a physical, and then you
physical?
Yeah, and then you see a social worker, and the social worker runs over your case with you, and then after that they
Assign you.
they assign you.
That's a long process. And that takes like a lot of mental fortitude just to get through that. Like,
Yeah.
it could be very easy to be like, never mind.
Yeah.
I'll just keep whatever it is that I have, and you keep all that paperwork. You just keep all
Yeah,
of it.
basically.
Because I've seen that a lot too. Like, people get really, really worn down by like
I mean, I do all the time. Like
talking
knowing
to people about it, and then having to, hash out like actual paperwork and like,
yeah.
or like just something as simple as like writing the same date over and over, or writing the same time over and over, or like just like rehashing even like the most seemingly innocuous details of it over and over and over again is enough to send people over the brink and off and away to God knows where, let alone. And then, they might be so traumatized by that they never seek any kind of treatment.
I took someone with me to do the process because I felt that this person also really needed to see someone, and they made it through both days of intake and then never showed up for therapy.
Oh, man. Maybe one day.
I hope so.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's never too late. When I was out there, I had a psychiatrist and a therapist. First shot too. Mine was 1 day. I wonder if maybe I got rushed. I also had someone pushing me to go. Yeah, I think you gotta go because you want to.
Well, I think the reason why it's 2 days at this specific place is because they have like open intake. So from certain hours on certain days, you can just walk in, and then they take whoever walks in, and then they do intake. So it's not an appointment thing.
So you're in there with the batch that you're in there with.
Right.
And you've probably got to squeak your wheel, I would imagine, to get. Yeah, it's a very strange thing of like what people assume the aftermath of trauma is and what it actually is are two wildly different notions a lot of the times. And how it, stuff affects people forever. Like, it's never going to go away.
Yep.
It would be like if you chopped off your arm, like, this isn't going to come back. Like, you can put a prosthetic there, but it's not going to be this. It's not going to be that. Or you can learn how to use the new thing and like all that jazz, but it's never going to be.
It's never going to be the same.
It's never going to be the arm that you once had.
Yeah.
It's just, it doesn't come back. It's like.
I mean, we have maps of the brain after going through certain things and like what a normal brain looks like versus like a brain with bipolar disorder or a brain of somebody who has autism or a brain of somebody that has ADHD and then somebody who went through trauma, and like it just breaks your brain.
Yeah.
It is
you have
really,
to completely rebuild all those neural pathways.
'Cause you can't,
if you ever do.
Yeah. And I mean, you can never get the brain back that you had. It is never going to be back. And the most you can do is figure out a better way to cope. And I mean, one of the hardest things, because I have endometriosis and I have fibromyalgia, and one of the things that my doctor said to me that no doctor has ever had the balls to say to me, she's like, you're going to be in pain for the rest of your life, and you just have to deal with it and figure out how to live with it. And that was so hard for me to hear, because I can't imagine living in pain for the rest of my life. But, you know, that's what it is. It's, you've got to figure out how to live with it as opposed to keep fighting it. And that's how you live a better life, because you're never going to be what you were before any of this.
And that's just the way it is.
Yep.
And again, points for honesty. Because she could have been like, so here's a prescription for a bunch of opioids.
Yeah.
Knock yourself out.
I have a super high tolerance for most pain medications. So, like, I take gabapentin, which is
But does that even work on fibromyalgia, though? Because fibromyalgia is like a different kind of pain.
Yeah, that's why they put you on gabapentin, which is specifically for nerve pain.
Gotcha.
So it does help. And you don't realize how much it helps until you don't take it.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh crap, this was helping way more than I thought it was.
Like, I don't need this. It's fine. Just kidding, I do. Yeah, well, that's like with headache medication, because they're like, if you think you're going to get a headache, like, take it. Don't wait. And then you wait, and you're like, oh, wow, that was terrible.
What is that? I don't know what that is. Are you saying Klonopin? I'm not familiar. Do you think Glycospin would be helpful, urethicase, for reviewing your right? I don't know. Both Mike and Garrick are in my tribe for Wastelands, and we actually have, because we don't really have time or anything, nobody's paying attention to their cell phones. So just randomly throughout the day, those of us that take medication, which is most of our tribe, we just scream out, take your meds!
Take them now. I'm surprised you guys don't have like a mutual like alarm clock.
We should just set for people.
We don't have a group chat. We've got a group alarm, and everybody checks in.
I'm lucky, like, I take all of mine at night. I'm supposed to take gabapentin throughout the day, but I don't like how it makes me feel, so I only take it at night. But yeah, it's just funny, because we just be like, take your meds!
It's a wild bunch.
Magic. I'm allergic to mushrooms. I have always wanted to do magic mushrooms, but I am allergic. So I have to figure out a way to do magic mushrooms without getting spores.
Without actually...
Well, there's like a way you can do it where there's no spores, because spores are what you're allergic to.
Oh, okay.
And I just have
Are you allergic to other fungi too?
Oh, I'm allergic to all mushrooms. I used to be able to at least eat truffles, and I love truffles. But every time I have mushrooms, my allergy gets worse and worse and worse. And I had truffle fries not that long ago. And it happened to be truffle fries that actually have truffles in it, because most of them don't. And
they weren't lying truffle fries.
It was bad.
Real.
Yeah, most truffle fries don't actually have truffles in them. So these were real
deal
fries.
They weren't fry lies. They were the real thing. Drink your water and take your meds. I agree.
Yep, that's it.
I think that should be the slogan for Los Angeles as a town.
Take your meds, drink water. We actually have an amazing billboard campaign here about suicide prevention. And it went up, I want to say 6 months ago, and I've really enjoyed it. And it's like they all say different things, but the one that just really hit me was the one that says, we're not healthy unless everyone's healthy. And
as a unit.
Yeah, as a community. And, I really liked that ad campaign about, suicide awareness and suicide prevention.
Yeah, that's true. Because we can't have people just out here flapping in the breeze. It's like not.
Actually, so I didn't know I was allergic to mushrooms until way late into life, because I don't eat mushrooms. I don't really like them. But I used to still be able to eat morels and truffles, which I like. And then Domino's changed their pizza formula, maybe like 10 years ago, maybe a little less. And they put mushrooms in their sauce. And I got a rash around my tongue, but I didn't think anything of it. I thought maybe it burned my tongue, and I just kept eating the pizza. And then I looked at my tongue, and there were just like all these bumps all around my tongue. And I was like, what the
Your
fuck?
taste buds are probably losing their little minds.
And I couldn't figure out what it was. And I tried to call Domino's to be like, hey, you know, what are you putting in your sauce? Because I'm allergic. And they're like, oh, well, we don't have to say anything more than we've already stated because we listed everything that's an allergen. And I was like, okay, cool, thanks. So then I had something that had like a mushroom gravy on top of it, and I had the same exact reaction, and I was like, oh shit, I'm allergic to mushrooms, and I didn't know because I never eat mushrooms.
That's a shame because mushroom gravy is delicious.
Mushroom gravy is delicious. I just don't like eating slimy stuff, and I feel that most mushrooms are slimy, so I don't
came out of a can, they're slimy.
I don't want to eat an actual mushroom.
Yes, I wish there were more ad campaigns here in Phoenix. There's no support out here.
I don't feel like there's a lot of support a lot of places.
Yeah.
We kind of have some interesting campaigns in LA. Same, I used to
Dude,
love.
fried morels are so fucking good. Like,
That's true.
So good. I had a cousin when I lived in Iowa who had them.
Yeah, I was going to say, where are you getting morels from? Because you can't get them here.
Had them growing wild in her backyard.
Yeah.
Which morels are super rare and super expensive. So the fact that she had them in her backyard.
Yeah,
was
morel
pretty
hunting
amazing.
is a thing, unless you didn't know.
So good. They look disgusting.
Did
but
she have
they're
like
so
a forest with moss? Is that what she had going on?
Yeah, I mean, most of us had that kind of shit going on.
Foresty mosses. All right. Well, the last thing that we have on our super long agenda is giving away the Dodgers tickets, which people are, they're saints for hanging on this long, especially since I extended the giveaway. So the winner ended up being Aunt Sandy. She's not my Aunt Sandy. She's Jessica Hall's Aunt Sandy, but that doesn't really matter because everyone calls her Aunt Sandy. So Dodgers tickets with the hot dogs are going to Aunt Sandy, and I'm going to send her. Oh my goodness. My neighbors are crazy. And I'm going to send her these before the game on July 6th. So that is for real.
What are they doing?
Ruining my life. That's what they're doing. Anyway, so that is enough No Filter Friday on Public House Media. Go check out some other shows like Choose to Rise and Beauties and Headcanons, which I think is having their 100th episode, which is pretty cool. And I will see you all next week. See you later, kids.